Hello and welcome to When Life Gives You Scraps. In today's video, we are going to tackle the number one problem plaguing quilters, the 1/4 inch seam. Whether you are a beginner or an experienced quilter, the 1/4 inch seam can definitely make you pull your hair out. If you are a beginner, I have an exercise that I want you to do before we dive in. Grab a piece of lined paper and meet me at your sewing machine. Great. Okay, let's get started. I want you to practice sewing a straight line. I know this sounds crazy, but it is important. Just sew along the lines of the paper until you feel good about the lines that you're creating. If you cannot maintain a straight line, it could very well be your machine. Okay, once you are able to sew a straight line, we need to find that 1/4 inch mark. If your machine came with or you purchased a 1/4 inch foot, wonderful. If not, let me show you a couple ways to mark where it is. There are several items that can make this step easier. Many quilt shops have a roll of 1/4 inch tape that you can stick to your machine, or they have these 1/4 inch rulers that are helpful. These items are fantastic, but they aren't necessary. With a ruler and some tape, you can achieve the same results. Start by lifting your presser foot and place your ruler under it. Now lower your needle until it barely hits the ruler at the 1/4 inch mark. It's important that the needle falls just inside the center of the ruler's 1/4 inch line, not to the left or to the right. Once you have it where you want it, make sure the ruler is straight and place your tape along the right side of the ruler. Now let's test it. Using a scrap of fabric, sew along that mark. Let's measure with our ruler. Your seam should fall just inside the 1/4 inch mark on your ruler. If necessary, go back and make the adjustments with your tape. Even if you're using a 1/4 inch foot, you may need to mark the machine like we've done above. I will tell you that even though I have a 1/4 inch foot on my Bernina, I have to move my needle over 1 notch to the right to get it perfect. You may want to try that. It's important to note that all machines are different and it may take some practice to get it right, but trust me, it will make the process that much more enjoyable when your seams match up. Okay, for this little project, I am going to use some 5-inch charm squares, and I'm going to just cut a 1.5 by 4.5 inch piece from each of the ones that I've got. I am right-handed, so I'm going to place the ruler in my left hand, the rotary cutters in my right hand. I want the left-hand side of my fabric to line up with the 1.5 inch line on my ruler. So here's 1.5. I want that 1.5 inch line just to line up with the left side of my fabric. I'm going to put pressure on the ruler, put the blade out, start from the bottom, and gently press up. Okay, now that I've cut the 1.5 inch strip off, remember I started out with a 5-inch square, so this is 1.5 by 5. I need to now turn this and trim this up to 4.5 inches. So I'm just going to lay that out. And I'm going to rotate my ruler. I'm going to line the top part of my fabric with one of the lines on the ruler. Just doesn't really matter which one. I want the left-hand side of my fabric to line up with the 4.5 inch mark of the ruler. Okay, so there we go. Pressure on the left-hand side, and I'm going to gently push up. All right, so now that we've got a 1.5 by 4.5 inch piece, you are going to want to repeat that until you have 36 of these strips. Okay, let's sew the 4 strips together. So here's my 4 strips, and this is the order that I want them to go in. I'm going to take the first 2 and I'm going to place them. This is the right side of the fabric. This is the wrong side. So I'm going to take the first 2 and I'm going to place them right sides together, and I'm going to sew just along this line here. So I'm going to line up the edge of the fabric with my 1/4 inch foot. And again, if you have tape that's down, it would be like this. You'd want that edge of the fabric just to run along the edge of your tape. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sew this. Okay, now don't take it out. We're going to do what we call chain stitching, which is continual. We're going to leave it just like that. We're going to take the next two. So we're going to take the next two, and again, place them right sides together. Nice and lined up. If you want to pin it, you can go ahead and pin it. I'm not a big pinner. I'm usually in too much of a hurry. So, okay, now that we're finished with this, we can go ahead and take these out. I'm going to take off all my threads. I like to leave a little bowl next to my sewing machine so I can throw those threads away. Okay, so here's what we've got. And we've got two pieces. I think I have one this way. I'm going to just finger press, so I'm going to fold this over, and I'm going to use my finger just to press it to the left. I'm going to do the same one here. This is the way I want it to go, so I'm going to go ahead and just finger press that to the left. And now I want to measure. I want to make sure that this measures 2.5 inches wide, and it does. Okay, so now that we've measured and made sure that each of these strip units measured 2.5 inches, I'm going to take the two sets, one set, two set, I'm going to place them right sides together, and I'm going to line up the top here, and I'm going to sew down this line. Okay, now that I've sewn this together, I'm going to go ahead and press this open with my finger. I'm just finger pressing it. I just want all my seams to be going in the same direction. They are. And now we're going to go ahead and take this over to the cutting table and see if it measures 4.5 inches square. Okay, let's see if we measure up. So we want our square to fall within the 4.5 inch mark of the ruler. So here's 4.5 and here's 4.5. So let's see if we measure up. I'm going to place the right corner of the fabric with the right corner of the ruler, and my fabric should fall right here, which it does, and right here, which it does. 4.5. It fits. You can see here my little right angle. This block is fitting right at the 4.5 inch mark. Okay, but you might be saying, hey Julie, mine is not measuring up. That's okay. I want to show you something. All right, this is the first one I did, and I'm gonna lay this up. You can see up here in the corner, I am off by 1/8 of an inch. The reason for that is because my seam allowance was off literally probably a line width, just the width of this little tiny line. But because I have 1, 2, 3 seams, if you take that little line and you multiply it by 3, I'm going to get the amount that I'm off. So I had to make an adjustment as well. Okay, now I just need you to keep practicing because, as they say, practice makes perfect. And I want you to make at least 9 blocks because I have a little project for you. But first, we need to iron. Okay, let's talk about ironing really quick. So before, I was showing you that when I opened up my seams, I finger pressed it. And by that, I just mean I open this up and I gently take my thumbnail and I'll press into that seam. I don't want to have any fold, okay? If you have any fold, it's going to take away from the size of your block. So you want to really get that open, and I just finger press it. I'm going to turn it over. I want all my seams to be going in the same direction, and they are. Now, I use an wool ironing pad. You can use an ironing mat, whatever you use, it's totally fine. I also use a little travel iron. It does not have steam. I don't like using steam. I've had a lot of irons spit and they've ruined blocks and quilts, so I don't do that. I do use a little mister, and I'll go ahead and just spray a little bit on here, and I'm going to iron. Now, typically when you iron, you think of ironing like this. We don't want to do that. We want to just go ahead and press right into the seam that we've already created. Okay, and we're just pressing. If you push on it, it will distort the fabric. Okay, so I'm just pressing it. That's neat. There we go. Okay, I've made 3 blocks, which is what I need for the row. So I want you to square up the block. Now, squaring up the block requires you to understand your ruler a little bit. I do love this ruler. I want to show you something. On the ruler, you've got it's represented by inches. Each of these tiny little lines is 1/8 of an inch. So 1/8, 2/8 would be 1/4, 3/8, 4/8 would be 1/2, 5/8, 6/8 is 3/4, 7/8, and then the inch. You want your block to be a square. I've measured all 3 of the blocks, and this is the smallest one, and it's measuring 4 3/8 by 4 1/2. I want it to be square, so it needs to be 4 3/8 square. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over this way because this is 4 1/2 inches, and I need to trim that up a little bit. So I'm going to line my ruler up at the edge of this, top of this block, at 4 3/8, and I'm going to line up the bottom at 4 3/8, so get a nice straight line. And I'm going to trim. Okay, so I'm just trimming off that edge. Now my block should measure 4 3/8 by 4 3/8. Okay, I need to trim this one up a little bit. I'm just going to get a little bit nicer here. So I'm at 4 3/8, 4 3/8, 4 3/8, and I'm just going to go ahead and trim it. Always shut your blade. Okay, so now this block is 4 3/8. Let's do that to the rest. All right. So here it is. This one's measuring 4 1/2. I'm going to bring that over to 4 3/8. So I'm lining this side of the ruler up with the 4 3/8 inch mark. I'm not worrying about the bottom yet. I'm just going to worry about the side. Okay, and I'm going to trim this up. And I'm going to turn it, go in the other direction, and I'm going to line up the side with 4 3/8. See, I'm at 4 3/8, 4 3/8, and I'm going to trim this side. Okay, close your blade. All right, let's do the third. Starting off here, I think this is the one that came up right. I'm lining that up at 4 3/8. Oh, that one, I'm cutting a lot off, so. All right, I want to show you that. So this one came out perfect, well, almost perfect. I'm going to line this up. I want to take just a little bit off of this edge and a little bit off of this edge. So I'm going to just scooch it over just a little bit. Take just a little bit off of that edge. I'm going to turn it over just like this. And I'm going to line this up at 4 3/8. And I'm going to take this off. This makes it a little bit even. All right, so I've trimmed up these sides. Now I need to trim up these sides. So I've got this here. I'm not I'm not worrying about the mat. I'm just focusing on the block and my ruler. If I can talk, that'd be great. Okay, so now I'm going to line this up at the edge, 4 3/8. It's a little jagged down here, so I'm going to go ahead and trim this up. And now I'm going to trim this up. All right, now all 3 of my blocks are the same size. So even if you did not get all your blocks 4 1/2 inches, don't worry, just trim them up. You want them all to be about the same size. Okay, we're gonna sew our blocks together. Now, I just wanna say really quick, for those of you who are following along that are professionals, your blocks ideally would be 4 1/2 inches. But for those of us who aren't getting our blocks exactly 4 1/2 inches, we do want them to all be the same size. That's why I trimmed them down to 4 3/8, because the smallest one was 4 3/8. So I hope that doesn't confuse you. But we've got our 3 blocks here. And what I want to do is I want to sew one going vertically, one going horizontally, and one going vertically. Okay, and there we go, all my seams going in the same direction. Okay, so I'm going to take the first 2 and I'm going to put them right sides together. Now, because I've trimmed them up, they should line up. See, 4 3/8. That's why if I had left 1 4 1/2 and 1 4 3/8, I would not get these to line up. Okay, and I want them to. Now I'm going to go ahead and just sew down this line. Again, I'm lining up with the edge of my 1/4 inch foot. If you have tape here, you're going to want to go ahead and line it up with the tape. If I could find my foot, we'd be doing really good. Okay, here we go. Okay. Now, I like to just trim that, throw that in my little bowl, and I've got here. Okay. So again, you can open it up, and I'm just going to finger press it for now. I'm a big finger presser. Okay. And now I'm going to take this one, and I want to put it on this side. I'm going to turn it over because I can see that my seams aren't going the right direction. Watch. That's what I'm talking about. That's okay. That's okay. Let's go ahead. Just ignore me. Okay. So I've lined this up. I'm going to go ahead and sew that. So when I sew, I just guide it. I don't pull on it. Okay. Yes, I'm going to throw this one away. Okay, I've made a second row, and I've made my blocks go opposite the first row. So in the first row, I went vertical, horizontal, vertical. The second row, I went horizontal, vertical, horizontal. Now I'm going to take these 2 rows, and I'm going to place them right sides together. When I iron, let's talk about that for a second. When I iron this row, the second row, I want them going in the opposite direction. Okay, so this first row, I've got the center going out. The second row, I've got them coming into the center. Okay, and I'm going to show you why. When I place this on top of here, I want them going opposite because I want to line up these seams at each other, and they should nest. And what I mean by nesting is that they'll come together and they'll just kind of lock in with each other. You can see that, how this comes right there. Now, if you want, I would pin it. If you're a beginner, I would pin it just to keep it in place. Let's do the next one. So here's the seam. It's kind of hard to see because they're both dark. This one's green. But these seams, they just kind of lock in right at each other. Okay. I'm going to find a pin. Hold on. All right. Oh, see, it's right here. Good night, nurse. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and put that right there. Now I'm going to sew this line here together. Okay, so when you're sewing this, you've got your seams that are coming up. Just make sure that they are staying in place and they're not, the foot's not wanting to push it going the other direction. So we're going to go ahead and just sew this. I'm going to leave my pin right here, take it out right at the last minute. Make sure that this lines up, go slow. I'm going to just take this out. I want to show you something. So those should be going in a different direction. So this one's going up, this one's coming down, and they're going to just nest right there. And then these ones are all going down, so no problem. Okay, let's go ahead and take this out. Open it up, and our seams match. Okay. So you're going to do the same thing with your last row of 3. The last row of 3, this one is going to go vertical, then horizontal, then vertical. Okay, so here's my third row. I'm going to again, it's vertical, horizontal, vertical. I'm going to right sides together, place it onto the second row, and I'm going to match up my seams here. I just want them to go just like that. I'm going to pin it. Sorry, just bump that. You can hear the birds. Okay, and I'm going to do the other one. I'm going to place this. And this seam is going to the left, so I want this one to go to the right. And I'm going to pin that one in place. Okay, and then I will sew right here. Okay, well, here it is. I hope you enjoyed this little project. Meet me back here next week for episode 3, the quilt sandwich. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great day quilting.